again by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
William able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
And the fans want one. Score! On the floor! Paul Kariya!
So you know how, like, for the longest time, it was like a thing that the people in infomercials are the dumbest people in the world?
Yeah.
Because it's always like, oh, do your cords come up around your neck and strangle you and hang you off your own balcony? And some dude's like falling over it into a thing of cords that looks like live snakes from Indiana Jones.
Yeah, my favorites are like, did you struggle to clean your kitchen? And it's like a fucking bomb went off in their kitchen.
Right. So for the longest time, that was like the dumbest version of a person that they wanted you to be like, oh, you're smarter than this person. Mm-hmm. And I think that has been replaced now by whoever the imaginary player is for ads for like phone video games, where you're like watching them play the game, and it's like, no, don't do that. That's stupid. Like the classic one I always think of now is like it's like the thing of like a bridge or a street, and there's like all these enemies flying at you, and it's like +5 or this, and you watch them just make the wrong choice every time, and it's like, no, like clearly you can map it out and see you need to get to this number by this point. Anyways,
if you watched every single one of those, the video is probably exactly the same, the layout video in the background, and they're just voiceover over top of it. I guarantee.
That wouldn't surprise me or whatever, but it's just like watching it be like, oh no, I should definitely not go for ×50 and instead go for +3. And it's like, no, that's. Anyways, I was playing video games in the elevator while I was doing my laundry, and
you know what I love too?
I fucking watched one of these idiots go into a dead end on a maze so simple. It could belong to like a child's menu.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I lost my shit.
What I love is that they're like essentially trying to say these are like influencers that you should know, and that's why you should play this game. But I don't think anybody actually knows any of them.
Right.
It's just like a fake influencer that they've put in there. Because I feel like anybody who has a decent following whatsoever is not going to get caught dead doing those, because they know the kind of stigma that comes with doing that type of advertising. Like you've sold your soul to the devil to do those.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably fair. But even when it's not like someone playing it, but like, you know what I mean? Like if there's no like person, it's just like gameplay footage. And you're just like watching this person be an absolute moron, and I'm just like, why are you doing that? That's clearly not the right decision.
Yeah, you're gonna start seeing ads come up in the middle of our show on YouTube with us promoting these games.
Hey,
so
man,
if somebody wants to pay us some money, then listen, we'll do that. A little mid-roll, right? Yeah, a little mid-roll right in the show of us demoing this game. I can cut it together real quick.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I guess we should just get to it, since it's just that kind of show today.
Yeah. We're doing the Metropolitan Division review to kick off our season preview, our division previews. So we're doing Metro, and then Central, Atlantic, finishing off with Pacific, Sans the Ducks, and then we'll be doing a Ducks season preview before the season begins.
Right. And for anybody listening right now, I apologize that I sound like a Muppet. My allergies are absolutely killing me right now, and so I 100% know that I sound like I'm on helium. Yeah, my allergies are just absolutely killing me, so I apologize in advance for that.
Yeah, no, don't worry, man. I'm in the same boat. So there's.
Are you allergic to snow?
Yeah, I wish.
What your allergy is in
snowing
Canada?
now.
You don't actually have pollen; it's just snow.
No, we're suffering from the same battle right now. Same thing. Same nemesis. Um, I get the beginning of spring and end of summer, and
Oh, the worst, bro.
started kicking my ass over the last couple days. So it's not been
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, the last week it's picked up. But as Eddie said, we are going to do the Metro today, and that's kind of perfect and bad, awful timing at the same time because obviously the news has come out over the last, I don't know, week, handful of days. I'm not even sure how long it's been at this point. But that Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau were tragically killed while riding bikes in their neighborhood growing up. I think it was like kind of the neighborhood they grew up in. I think they were at their parents' house. They were killed by a drunk driver. And it is an unimaginable tragedy. Obviously, every detail that comes out or has come out since seems to just be a misery multiplier that just makes it so much worse. You find out it was their sister's weddings, and then you find out Matthew's wife was pregnant. Johnny and his wife, their anniversary was like today, I think. We're recording Tuesday. I don't know what to say other than it's awful and it's tragedy because at this point, everybody has had a handful of days at the very least to process it in whatever ways they're trying to.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I feel like everybody's fairly, at this point, familiar, I guess is the kind of weird way to say it, with the tragedy in their own way.
Yeah, you see that unfortunate side of social media with these tragic situations. Unfortunately, I messaged you the night before when this started kind of trickling through, and you saw this a bit with the Kobe Bryant situation as well, but you get a lot of these unconfirmed third-hand reports that come in from non-verified sources, people close to people who are close to the situation type thing, right? Where they start coming in and saying, well, I know this person and this person knows this person who works for this whatever department, and they're saying this happened. And we got a lot of that night. I remember messaging you saying, listen, I don't, this is blowing up out of nowhere. I don't know if this is true, but this is ridiculous. We won't see anything until the morning. And I hate that it comes out that way. It's really, it just causes panic. I didn't want to go to sleep that night knowing, not knowing what was going on at that point, right? That's not, and when it's unverified like that, it's not something, there's a lot of hate going back and forth, and why would you put this out now when you're not 100% certified, and everybody's trying to chase the story, right, and be the first one to get it out, which is horrific in a situation like that. But you get a lot of that now with the way things are, and people wanting to be the one to break the news or put it out there, and it's so unfortunate that that's the way it came out. And then obviously I woke up in the morning, and then everything was confirmed officially at that point by official sources. But just a awful situation. Makes you sick to your stomach when, especially when you don't know, but then you wake up and you hear it's confirmed. And regardless of whether it was confirmed or not, you go to bed knowing whether it was him and his brother or not, somebody lost their lives, right? And whether, you don't know if it's causing panic within that family, and if they're okay or if they're not okay, and whether they are or not, somebody lost their lives, and all this drama is getting started for no reason without everybody knowing what's going on. So just a really terrible situation all around, and one at the end of the day that could have been avoided.
Yeah, I mean, shit on a number of levels, right? One, the guy was drunk driving. That's avoidable. Two, the way it was handled on social media, completely avoidable. It's just kind of this cacophony of awfulness.
Well, even compounding that too, I again still don't know if this is confirmed, but hearing that there was another man in the same city with the same name who was
getting death threats and shit like that. Yeah, I heard that too.
It's just the day and age that we live in that, again, people are trying to break news or aren't looking into their sources or whatever, and just immediately jumping to certain conclusions, and it causes harm to people who don't deserve it at that point, right? And it causes panic the night before anybody even knew what was going on. So it just compounds an already tragic situation with a lot of shit that's unnecessary.
Yeah, and it like you're saying, like it compounds, and it's, you know, because of, like technology and stuff, the gap of time
Hmm.
possible to go from having an impulsive thought to being able to make an impulsive action is so small, right? So, you know, the idea that you're going to send death threats to somebody for something they is insane, and you shouldn't do it. But then you add in, you think you're in the right because they killed two people.
Hmm.
And it's just like, now you have that like extra kind of like, well, I'm in the right. And then that cuts to how easy it is to find people online, right?
Hmm.
And now all of a sudden you end up in a situation where this thing hasn't been confirmed, and then it is confirmed, and then this guy's name gets out there, and then it turns out there's somebody else in that area who has that name, so that person's getting death threats, and it's like, we shouldn't be sending anybody death threats. We certainly shouldn't be sending them to the wrong people. Like, it's just
I just think we have access to a little bit too much
the,
now.
the ease is too much. I think it's
Yeah.
too easy to get information. I think it's good that there is access to this information, like by and large, right? Like some of the personal stuff we can
Yeah.
debate,
But
but
like,
just
should we
in
really be
general,
seeing the Zoom court call with
no,
with Sean
no, we
Higgins?
don't need
Like,
to see
should
the
we
Zoom
really
call in
be
the
seeing
arraignment.
that? Like, those types of things, right? Like, they take attention away from where attention should be given at that point, right? Like,
Yeah,
it should be focused on the families and what they're going through, and positive messages about Johnny and his brother, rather than, well, look what this idiot's doing on his Zoom hearing, and then sending death threats to somebody else because of what he's doing, right? Like, it's just,
yeah, and I
uh,
think the best way to try to think about it sometimes, especially in situations where it is very easy to find yourself being self-righteous, and I don't mean that necessarily as venomously as it sounds, because I do think is a time and place for self-righteousness. Um, I think it's best to ask yourself, how does this serve the victims?
yeah.
You know what I mean? And just, sending death threats to somebody doesn't do any good for the Gaudreau family,
Hmm.
right? Sending messages of love and support and going to these vigils and posting fan videos or messages of, I ran into him one time at a signing and he gave
Yeah.
me an extra 45 seconds of his time and it meant the world to me, right? Like those kinds of things, incredibly valuable, because what it does is it allows the family and friends of the deceased to like wrap themselves in this blanket of positivity and humanity about the people that they loved and lost.
Hmm.
None of that is serviced by sending death threats or, whatever, you know.
Yeah. The good thing is I've seen a lot more of that positivity over the last
Yeah.
couple days. I feel like it was, an initial just foray of information from everywhere, and different things coming out. But from a lot of what we've seen people gathering out front of the Flames arena, to pay tribute, and so I saw somebody painting a picture out front of, I want to call it Scotiabank Saddledome, but I don't think it's called that anymore. But yeah, just a lot of, people gathering at the scene as well, and a lot of positive messages going out from players. Obviously, you brought it to my attention. Cole Caulfield changing his number to number 13 to pay
Yep.
tribute to Johnny Gaudreau. So you're seeing a lot more of those messages come out, which is
Yeah.
great. It's very tough for us to lead this podcast. I mean, we have to talk about this. We're always going to, but it's very tough now to try and move on from that. We debated whether we'd talk about this at the beginning of the show or at the end of the show, and there's no right way to do it.
No.
We want to talk about it, and we want to show our attention to it, but we do have, more to get to and other things to talk about this, but we definitely don't want to shove it under the rug and act like it was nothing.
Right. And so, part of what we're going to do, obviously, with the preview is we're going to preview all the teams. So we wanted to talk about Johnny first and then talk about Columbus first in the hopes that everyone understands that there are weird but real hockey ramifications for this. And all of that is secondary. But it also doesn't, I don't think you can pretend the Blues don't exist, the Blue Jackets don't exist, right? Like, you can't talk about the Metro Division and then be like, and we're not going to talk about this team because of this. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's the right way to do it. I don't feel like it is. I feel like the best thing to do is to be like, I said to you, like, for me, like, the thing about this is, like, this is, let me just, I guess I will say this thought that I had about it, and we can go from wherever it is for as long as we want to talk about the Blue Jackets. They just lost a player who was probably, almost inarguably, the best player on the team. Mm-hmm. He was the face of the franchise at the moment, along with maybe Zach Werenski, as Juracek and Fantilli continue to grow into these roles. Ken Johnson continue to grow into these roles. And the other thing that we forgot to mention is they just went through a tragedy like this, like 3 or 4 years ago with, I think it was Joel Kiviranta was the goalie's name, who passed away at over the summer, like a 4th of July party at Manny Legacy's house. Like, I don't know how, because like something like this happens and you can see a world in which the team is just underwater. The water level is a foot above their heads. They're in grief. They're in loss. They're in mourning. They lose their best player. They lose one of the leaders of their team. Everything is kind of untethered and unmoored. And this is a season where they finish last in the league, because I don't think anybody necessarily had any gigantic expectations of this team heading into the season before this. And you could absolutely see a situation where they finish at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. I don't think it's insensitive to say and to speak about the ramifications of this on the team and how it affects the team. Whether, talk about affecting the team's performance, the fact that, that they have the amount of his salary freed up in cap space now. Like, these are all real world situations that occur from this. It's a very difficult conversation to talk about less than a week on,
right,
from the incident. It's something that as time goes on you're more comfortable talking about, but we are doing a season preview, and it's not in any ill faith. It's just we're talking about the Blue Jackets, and part of how their season's going to go is dealing with the ramifications from losing Johnny Gaudreau. So we have to cover that and make that clear from the get-go, as it's not to mean any harm or anything to
no, not at all
in the situation, but there are real-world ramifications from the situation, and if we're going to preview the team and how they're going to do this year, that those are things you have to touch on.
Yeah, and I think, like I was saying, like it could go really, really bad. There could also be a version of this where the team rallies around this loss. They come really close together. Maybe Adam Fantilli takes a step in his progression that he was going to take anyways, and that it is boosted by this emotion. It is boosted by this common kind of, I guess it's a trauma bond in a sense, but like this feeling of, we need to do this, or we should do this for Johnny, and all of a sudden they're pushing into the wild card. I don't think, and again, they have Dean Evison. He's going to be coaching his first year with this team. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I could see it going either way. And I don't know. that it's reasonable to say one or the other than to say, I don't think this is a team that I expected to be particularly good this season based on the talent that they had.
Yeah.
And I don't feel comfortable assuming an outcome of this other than to say this team lost their best player.
Mm-hmm.
And that is unequivocal.
Yeah. Yeah, Johnny Gaudreau leading scorer for the team last year, 60 points in 81 games. Werenski was second with 57. Nobody else had anywhere near that. Marchenko was next with 42, and then nobody else had above 35. So a team that loses Johnny Gaudreau, who's their top player last year, they also lost Patrick Laine in the trade to the Montreal Canadiens. Now, he only played 19 games for them last year, but it's still a loss, and it's still a significant loss nonetheless to that forward group. It's a group that didn't add anything significant in either position in the offseason. They're still going in with Elvis Merzlikins and Daniil Tarasov in net. On defense, I think Damon Severson was the out, or was he there last year?
He was last summer.
So you still have Werenski, you have Severson, Provorov, Goodbranson, Jordan Harris is, I guess, the ad on the blue line coming over in the Laine trade. David Jiricek's still there. Jack Johnson is back, and then a bunch of just kind of younger players who could potentially make their way into the lineup.
And they did add Sean Monahan.
Yeah, so Sean
Which
Monahan,
is, again, another thing that is especially weird because he played with Johnny in Calgary, and a big reason why he came to Columbus was to be with Johnny. And it's just like, well, what does that mean now? And then it's like, there were... The Sean Monahan contract was a wild contract. He is the highest paid forward on this team now. Yeah. And, he's only making $5.5 million, but it's still now he is the highest paid member on this forward group. And maybe, again, I apologize. I'm trying to get through this, and I'm just struggling because I know how some of this might sound to someone, but, you were paying him that with the understanding of, he played really, really well with Johnny in some of Johnny's best years and some of his best years. So maybe you overpay a little to get him to come so he can come and get the most out of this guy that you paid, the salary to last year and all that. And it's just well, fuck it. Now what do you do? You know what I mean? Obviously Johnny's gone, and now you've just got this guy on this 5-year deal. That's clearly an overpay. And it's just what is this team supposed to do other than, I guess, just pray to God Adam Fantilli turns into a superstar next year, which I don't think is out of the question.
Yeah.
We both love Adam Fantilli. We think very highly of him. We think very high of, Ken Johnson and David Jiricek. This is a team with a lot of talent. I'm not trying to say otherwise, but I don't think the young talent is come along enough in their development to this point that you can say, they should be pushing for a wild card spot.
Yeah, I mean, even so with that, you don't add any impact talent right off the bat from the draft. Caden Lindstrom's a great player, but he's going back to the WHL. I really highly doubt that he makes the Blue Jackets roster. Now, there's space for him to do so. I just personally don't think he's ready and don't see it happening. Now, if any of those players that were drafted that high were going to push for a roster spot, could be NHL ready, I think Caden Lindstrom clearly has the size to be able to compete at the NHL level, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with him and if he's ready. But yeah, beyond that, you're hoping for Fantilli to take steps forward, or hoping for Jiricek to take steps forward. You're hoping Ken Johnson can figure things out in that situation. Still, we have no idea how that looks. So there had been rumors at some point that he had asked for a trade out of Columbus. Now, obviously, things probably cooled on that, and there's a better picture for him to get into the top 6 now with Laine no longer there. So that
right, and
seems to be,
new coach, new general manager. These are all things that have changed. He did sign a 3-year deal. So clearly he feels comfortable with his opportunities that could be presented to him. A lot of it, I think, the frustration that led to him apparently asking for a trade or, hinting to it or whatever, had to do with his usage and the way he was being set up and down. And he was inconsistent at times, but he was a rookie.
Hmm.
So it's like, what are you asking for him? You're not necessarily putting him in a position to succeed. I think a lot of the frustrations that like Anaheim fans had with some of the way like Terry and Zegras were used are very easy to draw the parallels with the way Kent Johnson was handled. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting top six for Columbus heading into this season. I think Fantilli actually gets used at wing. I think center, you're probably going Monahan, Jenner, Sillinger. And then you've got Marchenko, who's going to be top line right wing because he's the highest goal scorer they have left for forward. You've got Fantilli, who will probably play on the left. Igor Chainikov can play on either wing, so can Ken Johnson. So there's your top six right there. Cole Sillinger, like I said, third line center. You can play him with Corrali or Danforth or whoever, Voronkov, whoever they kind of want to play him with. So it's an interesting top six. By no means is it good. I can't see them having any more than the 66 points than they had last year, but there's some things to look for, right? At least you look for growth in Fantilli, you look for growth in Kent Johnson, you look to see what Kirill Marchenko can be as kind of the primary goal scorer on this team now, and if that can move forward, you look to see what you can get potentially from Sean Monahan, and maybe Igor Chainikov can take a step forward with more top 6 minutes. So it's an intriguing forward group for sure, and maybe you can add Caden Lindstrom into that top 9 if they feel like he's ready. So some fun things to watch, but it does remind me of the Ducks a couple years ago when
Yeah.
Zegras was breaking into the lineup, and you're looking at these kids saying, okay, well, all of our hopes on them. There's a few veterans sprinkled into this roster, but there isn't much to look for heading into this season. It's more of what development can we see from these guys that gives us some promise for the future, and looking to see if it's time to move on from some of these kids or not. So that kind of feels like the year that they're going into. Honestly, the blue line's not that bad. The blue line's probably the best thing they have going for them.
You think so?
I mean, in terms of NHL level talent at this point in time, I think when you can say Werenski, Severson, Provorov, and Jiricek with Harris and Goodbranson is not the worst you could do. Certainly all are NHL players at that point. You get Goodbranson, I guess, is the seventh man, so it's not completely awful. There's some things in Harris and Jiricek to look forward to, and then there's some guys that are going to be able to put in a reliable performance on a nightly basis. But then behind them, you've got Elvis Merzlikins and Daniil Tarasov, who've both kind of proven they can't be NHL starter level. So it's a tough look in between sandwiched around that defense core.
Yeah. No, I think that's all fair.
Yeah, by no means am I saying it's a good defense core. It's just probably the best thing that Columbus has going for them at this point.
Yeah, I think maybe that has a lot to do as well. Like, Merzlikins stopped 3.48 goals saved above expected. He was 40th in the league at a 96. Yeah, I mean, apparently the line A thing was like a whole problem. So as much as they are losing what is a clear talent, like it could be addition by subtraction, just the way he wasn't getting on with the rest of that room.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, like it's definitely possible. Because he didn't play a handful of games last year. So you're losing a guy who played 19 games for you and didn't really do much for your roster next year. So that's not a significant loss. You can make up for that production, right? Like 9 points or so over 19 games with some of the, you hope Fantilli and Kent Johnson and Marchenko can make up for that small difference there. It's trying to make up for 60 points from Johnny Gaudreau, and how can you find that? I mean, you can't with the players they have in there, presumably, unless Fantilli is going to explode for 80, 90 points and take some of those guys along for a ride with them. And even if they do fill that void there, well, you're still just a 66-point team, right? Because unless things are getting better in other areas defensively and in net, then you're arguably just in the same spot you are last year. And honestly, is that a bad situation for Columbus? If they can kind of just be where they were last year and not significantly worse, you've at least overcome a lot of the adversity and problems people expected you to have going into the season.
Yeah, and I think, adding Dean Evison should improve the overall defense of the team. Like they had a bad expected goals for percentage of 45.64. Like their expected goals for percentage was actually worse than their goals for percentage. So you hope, I think, in the end that you're hoping in the end that Dean Evison can raise the floor in their own end, and then the young offensive talent can take a big step forward. And again, like you said, like it is the Anaheim thing where it's like, okay, are they going to be able to hold their own just long enough at 5-on-5 to maybe have a very good power play that maybe steals them some games or steals them some points over the course of the season, and they're still, within 4 or 5 points of a wild card spot by the time we get to the middle of December. I don't know. I'm not the most optimistic about it, but I do like Kent Johnson. I do like Adam Fantilli. I do like David Jiricek. I'm interested to see what Jordan Harris is outside of Montreal. Like there's things here to be able to look at and go, this could be good. This could be interesting. Mm-hmm. And it'll just be fascinating, I guess, in a sense, to see how it all plays out, except for the fact that, again, there's the whole Gaudreau part of it. And it's like, it isn't really fascinating because all these guys are going to be dealing with all this shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, I think we still see a situation. I think some teams are going to slide from where they were last year, but there was already such a big gap between Columbus and New Jersey from 8th to 7th that I don't see that being made up in any significant way, or any team falling down to that level and losing. At this point, you'd be saying over 20 points they'd have to lose from last year to this year, like that. I just don't see that happening. I think it's safe to say, and regardless of the situation, I think it was probably safe to say that Columbus was likely going to be the bottom team in the Metro Division this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's why don't we just go up from the standings last year? So let's go to New Jersey. This was a surprise for me last year where they finished. I think a surprise for everybody. I think everybody expected them to be a playoff team, if not a playoff team, a team pushing to lead the Metro Division, be up there with the Rangers and the Hurricanes, and really fight for a division championship. And they didn't, and they came well short of that. And the main issue for them last year was not scoring goals, because they had the third most goals in the division. It was keeping the puck out of the back of the net, allowing 283 goals against, which was, of course, second worst, only to Columbus, who gave up 300. So not a good year in net for the Devils, and they made changes to that to try and turn their season around, but it was a little bit too late. But they're going into next season with a completely new goaltending tandem than they started last year with Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting. Like, is Jacob Markstrom and Sheldon Keefe enough to get this team back to where they want to be? And I think the answer is yes. I mean, I think Markstrom is clearly the best goalie that Sheldon Keefe will have coached. I think, as much as I am a fan of Lindy Ruff, and he's apparently still working, back in Buffalo, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so, I like, I don't love giving up on John Marino. I don't love bringing in Brett Pesce.
Brett Pesce and Brendan Dillon on the blue line.
Yeah, I'm not super crazy about that, but I do think, given the way Sheldon Keefe is going to want to play, and the fact that they do still have Jack Hughes, I think this is a team that could push to win the division next year. I think they have a legitimate shot to go punch for punch with the Rangers.
Well, I mean, Jack Hughes gets back to. I mean, still a team that scored a lot of goals last year, and Jack Hughes kind of fell off from the season he had prior to that, where he had 99 points, 43 goals. He had 27 goals and 74 points now in 16 less games than he played the season before that. So he probably would have been. He's over a point per game, so you could put him probably around 90 points last year if he played the same amount of games. So he would have been close, about 35 goals probably. But a fully healthy season from Jack Hughes would help, I think. But again, this team didn't struggle to score goals last year. They managed to do that. It's just reworking the defensive side of the game, specifically goaltending. And they made a lot of changes, like you said. I mean, you bring in 2 new blue liners in Pesci and Dillon. You bring in 2 new goaltenders. You bring in a new coach to try and turn things around. So it's one of those situations that, things could all fall into place for the Devils, and they could fulfill the potential we thought they had last year, or it could be too many changes, and they could be right back where they were in near the bottom of the Metro Division. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be one of the teams to watch next year. I think, obviously, Jack Hughes is going to be great. Jesper Bratt's going to be excellent for them. Timo Meier should be good enough for them, right? So, like, all the players, Nico Hischier, all the players you expect to do well will do well. It's just if all the pieces of the puzzle are going to fit together and lead them to a playoff spot. So that'll be interesting for them. They're in this weird kind of transition period now where people are starting to expect success, right? They've got enough of the pieces in place. They've made enough of the moves. All their top young players are in the lineup or about to be in the lineup on a full-time basis. So they've really got to start showing some promise here. I think the fans are going to start getting concerned.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, Jack Hughes missed 20 games last year, still was tied for second in goals, tied for second in goals, second in assists, and second in points for the team.
Yeah.
Like, he missed 20 games and was still the second most productive player on the team. Then you added Nico Hischier missed 11 games and still put up 27 goals and 40 assists.
Mm-hmm. Timo Meier missed time too.
Yeah, and he led the team in goals.
They did lose Tyler Toffoli, who I think came over anyway in a trade, I believe. So.
Yeah. He was added in the offseason from Montreal.
Yeah.
And then traded just right around the deadline to Winnipeg and is now in San Jose.
They've lost him. They've lost Holtz. They've lost Marino, as you mentioned. So some players definitely on their way out. But even like Dougie Hamilton played 20 games last year. That's
right.
Significant if they can get him healthy for the entire season as well.
If Dougie Hamilton is healthy, man.
16 points in 20 games last year. He was great. When he was in the lineup, he was great.
Dude, this team should push for 110 points next year. They
should be in the mix to win the division. They really should. There's no
They
reason
should be in the President's Trophy conversation, especially with Markstrom.
Mm-hmm.
I
think it's a good enough decor in front of them. You've got, like you said, Hamilton, Pesci, Dillon, Siegenthaler is a good defenseman. And you've got Hughes and Nemec, who are great young players who did well last year and should take steps forward this year. So you've got a good enough decor in front of them, and you've shown last year with all the struggles that this team can score goals. And they really haven't touched that forward group at all.
And here's the thing that's crazy to me, right, about Sheldon Keefe, right? Because the way that it went in Toronto, it's very easy, I think, to be cynical about this team or this hire and what he'll be able to achieve. But Dougie Hamilton will be the best defenseman he's ever coached. And Jacob Markstrom is clearly the best goalie he's ever coached. And I don't know. I don't think going Bratt Hughes, Hischier, Meier is a huge drop off.
You could argue he's got a deeper forward core than.
I think he definitely has a deeper forward group.
Yeah.
I think if 28-year-old Timo Meyer versus 30-year-old John Tavares
Yeah.
is an interesting conversation.
He's got 6 guys who you can legitimately look at and say are all top 6 guys, right? Like you've got
Right.
Meyer, Hughes, Bratt, Hischer, Palat, Mercer. All guys that are top 6 forwards and should be top 6 forwards. Then you've got Haula, who's a good third-line player. Tatar they brought back, and he had success in New Jersey before. Stefan Nason's been good for them, so they've got enough pieces. And then you just look at, this is a team who has 3 second-round picks, and I believe they're first. Actually, I don't know how this...
No, they don't.
3 second-round picks who can look at adding another forward if they need to at the deadline, or a defenseman or something. They've got some assets to do, so they've got some young prospects if they want to as well. So this is a team that is good enough to at least be in the mix and has some assets. Seamus Casey, other young players, picks to get
Almost
better
$6
at the
million
deadline.
in cap space.
They do have to sign Dawson Mercer still. He's still an RFA, so that will be chewed up a little bit, but
Sure.
yeah.
But I this team should be good, man. Like I think this team should be expected to finish in the top 4 or 5 of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, they should easily be in the mix. I think they're a top 3 in this division, no question. I think they're up there with the Rangers and the Hurricanes. I don't trust the other teams anywhere in that range to be up there. I think it
Dude,
was
I think they're much better than the Hurricanes.
no, yeah,
The
I think
Hurricanes
so.
are
They
a
just
better
should,
coach team
a
because
bare
I think
minimum,
Brian
they
Brenneman is
should be up
incredible.
there. Yeah.
But again, like we could do, like I'll do this every year until the fucking sun explodes. Are we really sure that the answer for Carolina is fucking Freddie Anderson again? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
The Hurricanes are
how-
turning into that team that's very, very good in the regular season, but they just can't get over the hump. They're turning into that team.
dude, they're the fucking late aughts, early 2010s Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, you can look at
They're
the
the
Predators.
peak
They
Parise Suter Wild.
yeah. Yeah, no, they're definitely there, and I think from what I mean by that is the Devils' bare minimum should be in that conversation with the
Yeah,
Hurricanes
for
and
sure.
the Rangers, because we know the Hurricanes and the Rangers are going to be up fighting for the top of that division. The Devils should be up there. They should, and honestly, to get there, that means they're going to have to take points off Carolina and off the Rangers. So, to get up to the top, one of those other teams are going to have to fall a little bit. And if I had to pick between the Devils and the Hurricanes, I'd pick the Hurricanes to drop a few more points this year and be the team that falls off. Not because they're significantly worse, but just because I think the Rangers are a team that should be, again, fighting for the President's Trophy and are one of the best teams in the league. So if the Devils are going to pick off points from anywhere, it's going to be the Hurricanes.
If Rod Brind'Amour and Peter Laviolette switched places, would the Rangers be the odds-on favorite to win the Cup next year? If you gave him
Yeah.
Shesterkin, Panarin, and Adam Fox,
Yeah. I think you have to. You have
Like-
to say, yeah. The team they have is just too good for that to not be true.
and okay, let's get back to the Devils. But like I do think it's interesting to look at this as like groups, and I guess we could kind of move on from the Devils after this. But like, yeah, I think we're on the same page. The Devils should finish comfortably in a playoff spot. If they're anywhere near the wild card spot, something went really wrong. You know, Jacob Markstrom finished 3rd in goals saved above expected last year. You know, he has consistently over the last 5-6 years been one of the best goalies in the league. Like, we know the potential that he has. We know the simple, consistent system. Like, I don't want to pretend some of his shortcomings didn't happen in Toronto, but I do think Sheldon Keefe is going to be given a very serious opportunity here to show that it was not entirely his fault of the way it went down the last 5 years in Toronto. And I think, again, Jack Hughes is going to be 23. Is 23 going into this season, right? He's so young. And to think about the fact that Jack Hughes is only going to be 23 this year, like, he still potentially has another level to get to. Like I want to see something real quick. Let's see. He had a 99-point season in 22-23. I think he should be I think 110 points is very, very possible next year. Like a very real 110, potentially 120 point season for him.
Well, yeah, we were talking to a friend of ours a week ago, Chris. He not a dedicated hockey fan, but he asked for some bold predictions for the season so we could take him to Vegas. And one of the bold predictions I have for this year, and maybe it's not bold, but is that Jack Hughes will be in the Hart conversation or could be a Hart Trophy winner, because I do think the Devils are going to be in the mix as one of the best teams in the league. And Jack Hughes is at that kind of stage where he takes a step forward this year. He's been a 90-point player, he's on a 90-point pace last year. To take that step forward and be a 110, 120-point player, I think it's within range for him. And if they win the division, he is at 120 points. Even if McDavid's is at 130, 140, I think there's a good case for him to win it, because he will have a significant, probably 30 point gap on the next highest player in his team, you would imagine, right? Like,
probably, yeah. I don't know
the Devils having
gets to 20.
I can't see the Devils having
200
point players. I can't see Bratt hitting 100. I can't see Hischer hitting 100. Maybe Meyer, but Meyer would have to hit 50 goals to be at 100 points.
He might have to hit 60 goals to get to 100 points.
Yeah, so there's a real world where if everything goes right for the Devils, Jack Hughes should be in the Hart conversation.
How many players? Oh, go finish up.
No, I was just saying that would mean he had an unbelievable season for them to be in that position.
Right. How many players do you think hit 100 points last year?
7.
9.
9.
How many players do you think hit 110 points last year?
4.
5. Do you think you could name them?
McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon.
2 yes, 1 no. Not Draisaitl.
Draisaitl didn't hit it last year? Wow.
Not 110.
Kucherov?
Yep, he led 144. McKinnon was second, McDavid was third. So you need the 4th and 5th place players.
I don't think Kaprizov did it over 110.
No, he got to
over
96.
No, he didn't get over 100. Jeez. I don't think Matthews got there.
Nope, 107.
I gotta be missing somebody obvious, but
I will say they are forwards in the Eastern Conference.
Takes Rantanen out. Marchand didn't do it. No.
Nope.
Pasternak did though, right?
Yep. He was 5th, 110.
It's not Toronto. It's not Carolina. It's Panarin?
Yep, 120 points. So that is the company I think we're saying Jack Hughes could enter, and I don't think that's insane. I think Jack Hughes, look, my thing with Draisaitl is very real and all that shit. Jack Hughes to me is already better than Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah.
I just think he's a better player. I would much rather have Jack Hughes right now than Leon Draisaitl, especially given that fucking ridiculous contract.
Yeah.
I can't believe they gave him that much money. It's insane.
How far is McDavid from getting a pay raise? He's a couple years out, isn't he?
Next season is his last year on this deal.
Yeah, he's going to get 15, 16 in there. He's going somewhere else, man.
No, he's not. He's a fucking nerd. He's going to stay and never win a cup, and I'm going to laugh.
I don't know.
He's going to sign 8x16 or something stupid.
And they're going to have $30 million in 2 players.
I did see, and I hate that I like this, but I did see it. Somebody said McDavid should sign for 15.97 AAV, because then the combined AAV of him and Draisaitl would be 29.97, which is some real Sidney Crosby numerology shit. I respect it.
I love it.
Anyways, I think Jack Hughes should finish in the top 5 or 6 of Hart voting at the end of the year. I think he should probably finish should finish in the top 10 of scoring. I think this is a very real chance for New Jersey to make real noise this year.
Yeah, I mean, in a world where there's no Connor McDavid, you could argue him to be in the Art Ross conversation. But
Right.
and that's no disrespect to Kucherov either. It's just
Or Matthews or McKinnon or
yeah, but like he would be in. I could put him in that conversation with McKinnon to be around 120, 130 points if things go really well. But you just know full healthy season for McDavid, he's probably hitting 140, 150. That's the problem, right? And I can't see Jack Hughes getting to that level, but certainly being within the top 5 of scoring and being in that Hart conversation because of what is likely going to be the gap and him dragging his teams to success. I definitely think that is possible, but I think we both expect big things and a big step forward. I think when you look at points from last year to points from this year, the Devils should be the team that has the highest jump.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, we're on to the Flyers, and the funniest thing about looking at the Flyers situation is how much dead cap space they have. I wanted to bring it up on the Devils because the Devils are paying out the last remaining amount to Ilya Kovalchuk this year. They're paying $250,000 to Kovalchuk, and then it's done next year. He's finally done getting paid by the Devils. But the Flyers have now they can put Ellis on the LTIR, but that's still $6.25 million in dead cap. They have retained salary on Kevin Hayes for the next 2 seasons at over $3.5 million. They've got Cam Atkinson's buyout, which is $2.3 million next year, and they've got D'Angelo's buyout as well at $1.6 million. And then they have buried cap for Cal Peterson as well.
Yeah.
So around $15 million, right? Plus of cap space.
Yeah.
That they have either buried or dead or LTIR or something. So but they're still not an awful team on paper. They really aren't. It's
you know what
great,
would make
but it's
them
not
even
bad.
better?
A goaltender?
I was gonna say having taken Zeev Buium over fucking Jet Luchenko.
Yes. Yeah, that was wild and something else. But the team gets an injection in the sense, and I'm not talking about Ryan Johansson. that's one of their
flyer forward.
one of their additions last year. But no, it's the fact that Matvei Michkov is coming over and confirmed and signed a contract, and he will play in the NHL next season. That is a major addition to their team. Sean Couturier, if he can stay healthy, he's still one of the best two-way centers in the league. You've got Owen Tippett, Travis Konecny.
I mean, I would say at this point, Sean Couturier is one of the best defensive centers in the league.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, and even that, like, I don't even know.
Get 50, 60 points and be strong defensively. That's what you can hope for from him, I guess, right? So
yeah. No, I love Sean Couturier. The best years of Sean Couturier were fucking special, dude. He was in that Ryan O'Reilly, like, if he's your 1C, you don't really have a true 1C, but there's a lot worse not 1Cs you could have being as your first line center because you know he's going to show up every game. You know he's going to play hard. You know he's going to fucking get after it, and he's going to get guys into the fight with him. Like, I have nothing but all the love and time in the world for Sean Couturier at his peak. He's apparently fighting with John Tortorella. He's, he's going to be 31 this season. Like, let me see. What's his birthday? He's going to turn 32, and he's going to turn 32 in the beginning of December. Like, I just think what we can expect of him on a yearly basis now is significantly diminished. Fortunately for them, they have Owen Tippett. They have Travis Konecny. They have Joel Farabee, and they have Morgan Frost, who they may or may not be trying to trade. Like, there are certain players that are here that can make up the difference. I think they can't rely on Sean Couturier to be more than a solid second-line center.
Mm-hmm.
But they may not necessarily need him to be more than that if Joel Farabee is going to continue to produce at a high level, if Morgan Frost can continue to take steps. And then, again, like you said, they do have Matvei Michkov, who I would say is pretty handily the best player who hasn't played an NHL game yet.
Yep, no, I think that's fair.
I mean, I think he's definitively better than Macklin Celebrini.
Yeah, I would say so.
And maybe you want to say Celebrini's full game is, maybe makes him a little higher. I'm open to that argument. But on offensive upside, Matvey Michkov is the best player who hasn't played an NHL game yet.
Yep. Yeah, and I would say of younger players that have been drafted in the last couple of years, he's the best player outside of Connor Bedard at this point.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, I think the Flyers are going to be really interesting. They have 3 first-round picks next year. Like,
They're going to move those. You know they are.
they're going to move those. They're already, trying to fucking get out from the Ryan Johansson contract and say that he's secretly healthy. They were apparently trying to trade him as part of the Line A trade. Like, that $4 million is not going to be on their books one way or the other. They're going to find a way to get out of that. They can still move Cal Peterson and his $5 million cap. Like, there's ways, if Danny Briere is so inclined, for him to get creative here and make some interesting additions. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to be entirely about, like, goaltending. I mean, obviously they don't have Carter Hart anymore. They have Ivan Fedotov and Samuel Ursin, and Samuel Ursin showed flashes a little bit at the end of last year. Ivan Fedotov is going to be a 27-year-old rookie who's largely unproven. I think there's going to be a lot of questions in goal for them, but because they have John Tortorella, they have a coach whose whole system is trying to make life relatively easy for the goalie when possible. I wrote down some stuff quickly before the thing. Philadelphia had the second highest expected goals for percentage last year in the division at 52.75%. They had an absolutely terrible goals for percentage, and they had the worst save percentage in the division at 5-on-5. Like, it was very clear last year why the Flyers were struggling and why they ultimately failed to make the playoffs after being in the mix for far longer than anybody expected. And it's they have John Tortorella, so they have a chance in every game, and they don't have a goalie, so they kind of don't have a chance against great teams.
Yeah. The Flyers to me are so interesting because they are so close to getting out of this shit that we've made fun of them for so many years. The bad contracts and the dead cap that we made fun of just introducing to our preview of the show. But they're so close to getting out of that situation. Like you said, if you can get rid of Johansson's deal, if you can get rid of Cal Peterson, the only bad contracts you have left are Ellis, who's going to be LTIR space for the rest of his deal, which it is what it is. You can honestly use that to your advantage. Rasmus Ristolainen's deal and Sean Couturier's deal, I guess, and they're not even really that bad at this point. If they can both play, if they're both healthy, they're still both valuable members of this team. And then you look at the rest of the core, like you mentioned, Tippett, Konechny, Farabee, Frost.
We haven't even talked about our boy Jamie Drysdale.
Yeah, Drysdale, Brink, Michkov, Forster, Cam York, Travis Sanheim's young enough, right? Like Igor Zamula. They've got some other young players coming up. Like, they do have a youngish core, and up until the issues, they did have a young goaltender they had banked on their future with, and obviously that's not happening anymore. But they're a team that has young players, a young core. They're just finally getting out of this, and within the next year and a half, if they can hold out and keep a lot of these players, they're going to get out of the bad cap situation. And as you mentioned, they've got a lot of assets this year to try and get better and add things. And if I was the Flyers, I wouldn't look at trying to add rentals this year. I'd be looking at adding those guys that Tampa adds, guys with a couple of years left on their contract, to kind of get and push into the next couple of years where they should be out of those problems that they have. And 3 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks is nice fodder to play with to try and add to your team for this upcoming season and beyond.
How have we not done Ryan Ellis for John Gibson yet? What are we doing, man?
It just makes too much sense, and that's why it won't happen. Maybe just John Gibson doesn't want to go to the Flyers because he's a big Penguins guy.
That's true. Yeah, fuck Philly. Pittsburgh forever. Yeah, I think the Flyers are really going to be an interesting and fun team. I think, seeing how much longer the fucking John Tortorella experiment last. Like, we know that this front office has his back and that they chose him very specifically. We know Danny Briere and Keith Jones and apparent god of American hockey, fucking John LeClaire, made a conscious decision that John Tortorella was going to be the guy to shepherd this team over the next few years into the next era. If he doesn't get along with Michkov, if he tries to push out Morgan Frost, if he's not able to get on with some of these younger guys and get results, if he fucking falls out hard with Sean Couturier the way he did with fucking Kevin Hayes, like, I'm just fascinated to know how much leash he really has in terms of running this team on the ice and in the room the way he wants before Danny Briere steps in and says enough is enough. And is that entirely dependent upon results?
Mm-hmm.
Danny Briere's a lot of things. He's not fucking stupid. No. Like, he's made some very dumb decisions, but he's not stupid. We know he understands how important having a good goalie is. I don't think he's looking at this roster and being like, I don't understand why Ivan Fedotov isn't good enough. Like, maybe he is, but I don't think if this team struggles for goaltending next season that Danny Briere can look and go like, well, I gave this roster the best opportunity in net. Yeah. You know, so I think they're handcuffed. To know how much John Tortorella is going to be able to do and how much he's going to be able to get away with, and you know what the expectations are for him.
For me, again, this is a team that's going to be middle of the pack again, and it's strictly down to the goaltending. I think if they had better goaltending, you could put them in there as a team that could surprise and could fight to kind of get into one of the top 3 spots in the division. It's just very, very hard to see them and where we think the Devils are going to be to say that they could be better than the Devils, the Hurricanes, or the Rangers, right? So then you're saying, okay, well, then you're a wild card team. I think that's best case for the Flyers, is that right to the end they're fighting for a wild card spot. It's just how long can they do that with the goaltending they have, and can they make it long enough to a point where they're able to remedy that and rectify that in the middle of the season, right? Like, can they make it to the trade deadline with these two? You know, allow yourself to use the Ryan Ellis LTIR space and go out and use some of those picks to go and get a goaltender. Like, can they make it that far? I think that's going to be the question. And if results start going south early, does John Tortorella stick around, like you said, right? Like, I think the expectations aren't unrealistic from Briere, but certainly if they start going worse than expected, we could see a change. I think he expects this team to probably be, you know, fighting or just in that range for a playoff spot until you get to the deadline and can make some of those changes that can push this team, you know, comfortably into the playoffs. But if they're nowhere near that, you know, come November, December, we could likely see a coaching change.
Yeah, I think if they had better goaltending last year, they take the Washington place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the question is does that change how we feel about the team this year? And I don't know that it does, because they're clearly the 4th team. We clearly think the Islanders are going to fall out and the Jersey is going to take that spot. So, like, you know, again, like, then we haven't even talked about the fact that there's a whole other division that is going to have 5 teams pushing for a wild card spot. Like, yeah. The wild card race in the East should be really good. Like, I want to double check right now, but Tampa won the first wild card spot with 98 points. After that, 91, 91, 88, 87, 84, 81. And that 81 is the Devils. 84 was the Sabres, 87 Philadelphia, 88 Pittsburgh, and 91 Red Wings. Like, those are all teams that are going to come into the season with expectations of finishing higher in their standings than they did last year. Should reasonably expect to, and there's only 2 wild card spots. And I don't know how much room is available at the top of those divisions given how good the teams at the top of those divisions are. Like, again, we'll get to the Atlantic, but I think you can say it should be Florida, Boston, Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And like we've started talking about here, it should be Rangers, Canes, and Devils.
Yep.
So you're going to have 10 teams fighting for 2 spots. And that's good. That's what we want as hockey fans, right? Is this race. And, a couple of those teams aren't going to be in it, right? Montreal, Columbus, we fully expect to not be there. But, like, Pittsburgh still fucking has Sidney Crosby. Like, they still do. They just added Rucker McGroarty. I think he should be a long shot to win the Calder this year. Like, there's just so much going on here. And, again, if they have better goaltending last year, they probably make the playoffs in a wild card spot. But I don't know that I feel any better about that as far as this year is concerned if they make a wild card spot last year.
Yeah. I think what we're going to see is of those 10 teams that we think we're going to be fighting, there's going to be about 3 or 4 that fall off drastically and are out of it a lot sooner than we expect. And I honestly, I don't know if you share this opinion, but I feel like the Penguins are going to be that team this year. They have no Jay Gensel. Now, obviously, they traded him to the Hurricanes, and then he's off now to Tampa Bay. But he was 52 of their points last year at 52 and 50 games. So they obviously still have Crosby, who is miles above anybody else in scoring last year. Malkin actually played a full healthy season, which it feels like a rarity for him. Maybe I'm projecting a little bit, but 67 points in 82 games. Brian Rust, when healthy, is kind of the Chris Kunitz for Crosby of this era because he had 56 points in 62 games. But beyond that, there really isn't much else. Riley Smith isn't back, so they lose 40 points there. Ricard Raquel's still there. I think no Lars Eller either. I think he's gone. I don't know if Drew O'Connor is still there. I think he is. But this is... they still do have Lars Eller. But this is a team with just kind of a lot of pieces, right? Like, it really is. And things could go well, but it's Sidney Crosby trying to drag this team at, 37?
Yep.
And how long are you going to rely on that? Because Malkin seems like he's starting to slow down. So you've got Sid, Malkin, Rust, Raquel, Bunting, Kevin Hayes, Cody Glass, Lars Eller, Noel Acciari, Blake Lizotte, Anthony Beauvillier, Drew O'Connor, Jesse Puljujarvi, and Emil Bemstrom. It's just a lot of guys. Like
Blake Lizotte, free agent signing of the offseason, just so we're clear.
I do like some of these players. Like, I do like Blake Lizotte. I do like what Lars Eller could bring. I like bringing a younger player like Cody Glass. And you mentioned Rucker McGroarty and bringing him in and what he could do, maybe playing with Crosby and Russ. So, like, there's some things to look for. But it's just a lot of guys, man. And it's a lot of aging guys that you're still expecting to lead this team because the 2 best forwards on this team are Crosby and Malkin, who are 37 and 38. The best defensemen on this team are Erik Karlsson, who's 34, and Chris Letang, who's 37. And Tristan Jarry, over the last couple seasons, has proven that I don't know if he's really a starting netminder at that time. He really has struggled when this team has started to turn south. He's had the John Gibson effect, right, where the team isn't as good as they were anymore, and the numbers aren't at the level they were when this team was good. So I don't know, man. I honestly don't know what to expect from this team. I do think they're going to fall off, but if you tell me they're in the wild card mix come trade deadline, I think there's enough here to justify it. I just see it as a lot of guys, and I don't know if they're all going to kind of form enough of a team together that they're going to be successful.
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think... they fucking... Like, you talked about the forward group. Erik Karlsson, Chris Letang, Ryan Graves, Marcus Pettersson is a good top 4. Mm-hmm. Then you add in, they've got Matt Grzelcyk, Sebastian Aho, and John Ludwig. I like Matt Grzelcyk a lot. I think as a third pairing guy, he will be very good for them. He'll be able to skate the puck and, do some interesting stuff for them. I think they're going to be hoping Ryan Graves bounces back because he was pretty bad last year. Mm-hmm. Erik Karlsson is 34. Chris Letang is 400. Neither one of them are known for their defense. So you're really putting a lot of pressure on Ryan Graves and Marcus Pettersson to minimize, the hellfire that Tristan Yarry has to swim to because, yeah, this team has struggled, and as they've struggled, he's struggled, and he certainly doesn't seem to be making anything better. But nothing about the team in front of him really, to me, suggests that it should be getting better. Like, Michael Bunting and Kevin Hayes are perfectly fine third liners. I think there's something interesting there. Maybe Michael Bunting plays with Sidney Crosby, and because Michael Bunting plays, and I say this with love, an idiot's game, skate in a straight line, go to the net, put my stick on the ice, maybe it works out, right? Maybe Michael Bunting pops. But I don't know that I want to count on Michael Bunting to be the guy to pop.
Yeah. I mean, he was good with the Penguins, 19 points in 21 games. But, this is the thing for me, this is a team, like we mentioned, led by those 4 older players. Now, Malkin has had his own injury problems. Letang's had his own injury problems. Erik Karlsson's had his own injury problems. Crosby at some point, but he, over the last few years, has played most of the games for the Penguins. The most surprising thing about all of this for me is all 4 of those guys played all 82 games for the Penguins last year.
No shit.
And they still finished where they finished. So if you're telling me that they're going to go into this season with all these guys, and they all played 82 games last year, and their additions are, you've lost Jake Gensel, and now you're getting a full season of Michael Bunting to hope that maybe he can replace what Gensel gave you, close to a point per game. You're banking on Rutger McGroarty to come in and give you more points and maybe, replenish what you lost from Riley Smith. But you're not adding anything significantly more than what you had last year. And you have to hope that all 4 of those guys stay healthy again to get you just kind of somewhat near where you were. I can't see it. I can't see all 4 of those guys playing 82 games again. I can't. With their injury history, with their ages, I just can't see them all staying healthy for another season. And even if they do, they all did last year, and it wasn't enough for this team. So you're hoping,
right,
you're banking on them all staying healthy, and them all at this point in their career somehow being better than they had. Can you ask for more than from what you got from Sidney Crosby last year? You can't. Can you ask more from Malkin? Maybe, but at 38, is he going to give you more than 67 points in 82 games? That's asking a lot. And even Letang and Karlsson both being over 50 points is extremely good for where they're at in their careers. And at the ages that they're at right now. You had very good seasons from all 4 of those guys last year, and it wasn't enough. So I don't know where they're getting it from. I mean, you have to hope then that the goaltending is enough. But we talked about that with the Devils, and we talked about that with the Flyers, and that's what it seems to come down to for a lot of these teams is they have some of the pieces there, but for them to take the next step forward, the goaltending has to be better. And I don't see it. I don't see all the pieces being able to line up for the Penguins to make a jump back into the playoffs. Could they be in the mix for a wild card? Sure, but I just don't see it. I think they're a team that's going to kind of fall down to potentially even that second last spot in this division.
Is this the year Mike Sullivan finally gets fired?
It might be, and I don't think it's any fault of his own. I just think this team is pushing that boundary now of this is it for them. They haven't
Sidney
really.
Crosby had 94 points at 36 years old.
Yeah, it's insane.
I don't want to hear another fucking thing about Connor McDavid being better than Sidney Crosby ever the fuck again. I'm sorry. It's fucking insane that we pretend. It's absolutely fucking insane that we pretend Connor McDavid is a better hockey player than Sidney fucking Crosby. I'm so fucking embarrassed for hockey media. It's absolutely fucking nuts.
I mean,
36 years old, dude, and he's still one of the. You want to talk about an elite two-way center?
Yeah.
You want to talk about a dude who can do everything, everywhere on the ice. 36 years old, played 82 games, had 42 fucking goals, 52 fucking assists, 20 minutes a night. He was almost 60% in the face-off circle. Again, there's literally nothing this guy can't fucking do. What are we talking about?
The Penguins are just at that stage where they were perfectly fine last year. They
Yeah, and I think
255
that's,
goals,
to
like,
your point, that's exactly the problem. They were perfectly fine last year, and a lot of things that you should not expect to go right went right, which means when you account for some of those things going wrong, even with new things going right,
yeah.
it is hard to see them cracking 90 points, let alone really
I
making
mean,
a push.
listen, they were the third best defensive team in their division. So they were even talking about goaltending and everything, but like the Capitals allowed more goals, the Devils, the Blue Jackets, and the Islanders allowed more goals than the Penguins did. The Penguins also scored more goals than the Islanders, scored more goals than the Caps, scored more goals than the Flyers, scored more goals than the Blue Jackets. They were just like a middle of the pack team in the division, and they finished middle of the pack. Like, you give them an extra 4 or 5 points, they're up there with, they get the puck bounces a certain way for them in a couple of these games. They win a few of those overtime, 12 overtime losses they had. Then they're up there with, the Islanders and the Capitals. They could have been in there. It's just, again, like I'm saying, is a team who was perfectly fine last year, who had their 4 superstars, aging superstars, who have track records of injury problems, all played 82 games last year, and they were just perfectly fine. I just don't see how it gets better than last year for them, because last year almost feels like it was the best case scenario for them, and they had Jake Gensel, and now they don't have him, and you're expecting things to get better. Crosby's gonna have to put up 120 points to drag them to where Malkin's gonna have to get back up to 80 or 90. Erik Karlsson's gonna have to have a 70-point season. Like, these are the things that are gonna have to change for them to get back in, or somehow they're going to have to turn 12 of those their 12 overtime losses down to 6 and win 6 of them and get around 44 wins. Like, that's the only reason I could see them potentially fighting for a wild card spot, is if things are perfectly fine this year and they get a few more bounces, then they should be in the conversation again. I just don't see it happening.
You know what fucking happens, right? This is the year Jesse Puljujarvi finally puts together like 30 goals or some more shit, and they sneak in as like the first wild card.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, because the Penguins always just seem to do it, right? They find these guys, they bring them in the right situation, and things happen. And Mike Sullivan's a good enough coach that, things could
Mike
happen.
Sullivan's a very good coach.
Yeah.
I don't want to say he's a good enough. He's a very good coach. He is, I think, clearly one of the better coaches in the league.
And listen, the Penguins are going to go for it. If they're in the mix, we know they're going to go for it. They're all in on this. They have absolutely nothing in the pipeline. They have, they always trade their draft picks. They always move guys out. So, the first move we saw for them in a positive direction for the future almost wasn't. Like, McGrody, bringing in Record McGrody, they still gave up a younger prospect for him to get an NHL ready prospect. So it is a move that still kind of fits the way that Penguins operate, which is bringing in a player who can help them now and giving up their futures. They trade Yeager, who's a couple years away, for McGrody, who can step into the lineup right away. So, yeah, I mean,
but that almost is better that he's not 2 years off, given that sure. I don't know what good Yeager is in 2 years. So just thinking about what you were saying, and it occurred to me that, God, at this point, I don't know how many fucking years ago it was, but Pittsburgh made a trade at one point, and they traded out a very well thought of young right-handed defenseman named Kalen Addison.
Yeah.
Kalen Addison is an unrestricted free agent right now after not being qualified by the Sharks. How has Kalen Addison not been brought? Maybe it's just because, like, it's not the front office who drafted him, but, like, boy, if anybody should be taking a run at Yamamoto or Kalen Addison or some of these younger guys with potential, how is it not the Penguins? Sign him to a fucking 1 year, 2-way deal, sub $1 million, and just be like, hey, let's see what happens. Come into camp, see if you can fight for a spot in the bottom, and let's see what happens.
I mean, yeah. Listen, I don't hate it necessarily, but I think the Penguins just have so many of those guys already. Like we listed, they have a bunch of guys who can play and should play in the NHL. It's just like, is that enough a quality depth. Like, again, your second line of Bunting, Malkin, Raquel. Is that enough?
Yeah.
Crosby, Rust, McGroarty, if that's going to be the case, like, Sid's enough to carry that and do
Right.
but like, is Malkin going to be enough for that second line to get those guys going? You don't know. And then, Lars Eller and Drew O'Connor and the rest of the guys we mentioned already for the third and fourth line, like, are you going to get enough scoring from those guys? And then again, I've harped on this so many times now, are those big four guys going to stay healthy for another 82 games, all of them? I would bet money the answer is no, because
Right.
you were shocked to even hear, and I was shocked to see that all of them played 82 games last year. Just
I had
because,
no idea. I had absolutely no idea.
based off the names, you would have expected at least one of them to miss 15, 20 games last year, because
Yeah,
that's
100%.
usually the case, right? And very surprising they didn't. So I don't know. I expect some regression, but I don't expect as much regression as this next team, which is the Washington Capitals.
Which is why when you said you could see Pittsburgh finishing second to last, that is the part of it that I can't get, just because I fully expect the Washington Capitals to finish with 82, 83 points.
Yeah.
There is a world where the Washington Capitals don't even reach 80 points, and I don't think that's crazy.
So can you remind me of the trade that brought Pierre-Luc Dubois here?
It was Pierre-Luc Dubois for whatever fucking dumbass goalie.
Darcy Kemper?
Darcy Kemper, yeah.
Right, okay.
Uh,
So they've added Pierre-Luc Dubois, they've added Andrew Mangiapane, which isn't, like, those aren't terrible additions. Like, I don't hate them. You add that to Oshie, Strome, obviously Tom Wilson, and Alexander Ovechkin. You've got Connor McMichael there. So, like, the top six is actually okay. Like, it's okay, right? It's good enough to say, they could be in the mix there. Now, you're again, like we mentioned, with the Penguins relying on Sid, you're hoping that Ovi can be a 30 to 40 goal scorer there, because Tom Wilson's not, Mangiapane's not, Oshie definitely is not anymore, Dylan Strome's not, and Pierre-Luc Dubois is not. So this team struggled to score goals last year, and I can't see them really scoring much more this year. They actually scored the least amount of goals in their division. So if their bread and butter is defensively, they're going to be able to draw them through some games. I don't know if, even with the additions of Matt Roy and Jacob Chychrun, if that's enough, because you've got Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson in net, so there's a lot of turnover. I'm looking at this roster and seeing much more turnover than I even really thought they had going into this season. I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't looked at the Washington Capitals roster in a while. A lot of new faces here, but I still just don't see it as enough, man. They are in the same kind of breath as the Penguins, where it's just that aging core is just kind of dragging.
Yeah, except they're worse off because they don't even have 2, 3, and 4 stars. Like, they have whatever is left of John Carlson, but I'm not sure how much is really left in those legs. Like, he still put up 40 assists last year, which isn't nothing. Like, he's still going to be able to produce on the power play. Like, I don't want to pretend that he's not going to be effective, but, like, again, they had a almost career year from Anthony Mantha. It barely made the fucking playoffs. Like, I like the Pierre-Luc Dubois gamble. It's weird that they're deciding that Charlie Lindgren, like, I don't think highly of Kemper, but Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson being the battery in net is interesting.
Logan Thompson
Ryan
has
Leonard's,
to be a product of the Vegas system, right? Like,
you would think.
Yeah.
You would assume Logan Thompson is coming in to be the backup or number 2, maybe 1B to Charlie Lindgren, who kind of popped for them last year. But, like, again, like, okay, so you're looking at Wilson, Ovechkin, and Strome on the top line, and then Mangiapane, Oshie, and Pierre-Luc Dubois on the second line. Like, okay, I guess I can see what you think might happen there, but I'm not overly excited about it. I don't think this is a team. Again, like, I don't think this team hits 90 points. I don't think they hit 88, 85 points. Like, I think this is the team that finishes, like, they could very easily finish in the bottom 5 of the league.
Well, where does this team get goals? Because they didn't score a lot of goals last year. Ovechkin was the leading goal scorer. We all hope and wish that he could, get 40 plus. I think he needs 42 to break the record next year.
Right.
But like that's a stretch. So for him even hitting 30 would be an accomplishment. Beyond that, they only had 2 other players hit over 20, and one of them they shipped out the door in Anthony Mantha. So you've got 2 20 to 30 goal scorers in Strome and Ovechkin on the team. I don't see Milano doing it, even though he had 15 and 49. I just can't see it. I don't know. Connor McMichael maybe hit 18 and 80. Sorry, so maybe. Tom Wilson was close. He had 18 and 74, so maybe that's the case. But Andrew Mangiapane has only had over 20 once, and it's when he had the outlier season of 35, playing on the top line with the Flames. Pierre-Luc Dubois scored over 20, I think 4 times, twice with the Blue Jackets, twice with the Jets.
I don't think he's ever. I don't think that's true. Let me double check. I am not being funny, dude. I am almost.
No, he had 20 in his first season with the Blue Jackets, 27 the next season, 18 the season after that. He had 28 with the Jets in 21-22, and he had 27 with the Jets in 22-23. He had 16 in 82 games last year.
Okay, all right.
So they'll get some there, but Pierre-Luc Dubois replaces Anthony Mantha's goal scoring, right? So then you've got Mangiapane to come in and add 15 goals to this team. Like, maybe they score. But the thing is, like, adding 10 or 20 goals to this team still makes them a bottom 2 goal scoring team in this division. Like, it doesn't do much for them.
Yeah, and I don't think they have the horses on the back end to make that work in their favor.
Yeah.
It should be pretty bad in Washington next year, man. It should be pretty fucking bad. And, like, if you're them, maybe you go look. Dylan Strome came in and was fucking awesome. Sonny Milano came in and has been very good. Like, maybe that's kind of where you're hoping you can find some of these things. But, like, again, in this division, in this conference, I don't think you can expect this team to finish, fucking higher than 5th.
No, the goaltending's not good enough, and while I like the additions of Matt Roy and Jacob Chychrun, I don't think it's enough for the rest of that blue line. And they're just, again, the main thing for me, the main thing for me was the Penguins and their 4 older players staying healthy. The main thing for me with the Caps is they're just not going to score enough goals. And they got bailed out by some good defensive play and some decent goaltending last year. And I don't have any trust in Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson even being better than what they had, or even being on par with what they had last year. So if they're not going to be as good defensively, I don't think they're going to score significantly more goals. I don't see how this team finishes any higher at all than they did last year.
Yeah, no, I think there's every reason to expect this team to fall. Maybe bottom 5 is a little melodramatic, but we could absolutely see a world where they're picking 7, 8, 9 next year in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's crazy at all.
No. And then Obi probably has his banner season the season after, breaks the record, and then that's it for him.
Yeah, and I think you could easily argue, and I'm sure there are a lot of Capitals fans who would, that making the playoffs last year was a net negative for them. Thinking about how great it is for them that they have Ryan Leonard, it would be really nice if they had fucking anybody else to put him with. And they just don't. They just don't have another quality prospect like Ryan Leonard. Like Hendrix Lapierre is, at this point, seems like he's a middle 6 guy at best. So I don't really know what the excitement is if you're them, other than like Ovechkin hopefully breaks the record and we pick in the top 10 and get somebody good and maybe we win a lottery.
It's not even like they have anybody young and exciting coming along to look at either right now. So it is just kind of rooting for Ovechkin and hoping that you can kind of just stay in the mix for most of it. But the way I see it flying is the Devils really kind of jump up and the Capitals almost fall down and take their place, and then you've got the kind of mosh pit of the three teams again with the Penguins, Flyers, and the team we'll talk about now, and the Islanders just kind of fighting in and around for that third, fourth spot and being in the wild card conversation for a little bit. But as much as we don't think the Penguins and the Flyers have enough because of certain issues, I don't think the Islanders have enough to say that they're going to be any significantly better. Defensively, they were one of the worst teams in the division last year. They scored a decent amount of goals, but nothing significant. And if we talk about teams, not adding and teams adding, like the Islanders are going in with pretty much the exact same team, except adding Anthony Duclair, I think, is really all they did.
Yeah.
You've still got Barzal and Horvat, Lee, Nelson, Palmieri, Pajot, Engvall, Cizikas. They're all still there. The blue line's exactly the same. And Pulock, Pelech, Dobson, Mayfield, Romanov, Sorokin, and Varlamov are still there. There's absolutely no difference to this team other than adding Anthony Duclair. And is that really going to make a difference for this team? I don't think so. Much like I don't see it getting much better for the Penguins, I don't see where they get better. Like, Barzal was a point per game last year, so is Barzal a 90 to 100 point player? I don't think so. I don't see a world where that happens. Is Noah Dobson better than 70 points in 79 games? No. I can't see him being more than that. That was an exceptional season from Noah Dobson, and it resulted
That was gonna.
in...
No, that was gonna be my question to you. Is does Noah Dobson hit 60 points again? You can't count on defensemen to hit 60 points.
Well, do you get Palmieri, Nelson, and Horvat scoring over 30? They all scored over 30 last year.
I mean, maybe you shit. Outside of Cole Yzerman making this roster and making a real run at the Calder, this team just didn't add the level of firepower. And I don't think Patrick Waugh is a good enough coach that it's just Patrick Waugh plus Ilya Sorokin is enough.
Yeah.
I like Horvat. I like Barzal. I like Anders Lee. But, this doesn't feel like this team has the necessary talent. I like Romanov. I like Dobson. These are good young players. I don't this is a wild card team at best.
Well, yeah, they're exactly what they were last year because they haven't done anything else. And again, the best case for them almost seems like what they did last year because there wasn't anybody that really underperformed. You could argue the only way this gets better for them is Anders Lee has a bit of a rebound and gets up there, but are they going to have 4 30-goal scorers? Are Lee, Palmieri, Horvat, and Nelson all going to score 30 next year? Lee had 20, so 10 goals isn't going to make a major difference to their goal scoring acumen. And then there's nobody else that's going to take a step forward. Engvall, Holmstrom,
fucking Pajot.
Yeah, none of those guys are bit part role players for the team, and they play their part. But like we said, everybody felt like they had their best seasons last year with Barzal, Dobson, Nelson, Horvat, Palmieri. They all had their best seasons. So how does it get significantly better than this? Just like you said, if you could even add Cole Yzerman, maybe, but he's not even signed because he's still in the NTDP and going to college. Not this year, but he's slated to go to Boston University 2 seasons from now. So he's nowhere near ready for them to even come into the lineup. So they're in that mix where they'll be what they were last year in a best case, and that's where the Penguins are, and that's where the Flyers are, because not much has changed, or what has changed isn't enough to move the needle, where all these teams will be fighting around that 80 to 90 point mark for a wild card spot, but they just don't have that next level or that addition that has been brought in to push them into that 100-point threshold with the Hurricanes and the Rangers, or to be in that same realm of jumping points like we expect the Devils to be. They just don't have that, that ability or that potential to jump into that next tier.
Yeah, and look, I really like, from a defensive standpoint, Pelech, Pulock, Dobson, Romanov, Sorokin. I like that top 4 plus starting goalie talent group. I like Barzal. I like Horvat. But fuck it, hey, everything else is just like you said. This is a team whose overriding ethos is competence. And in a division that should have a team bounce back in Jersey and have two teams in Philly and Pittsburgh that I would say have institutional things that give you a little bit of optimism. Like, I don't see a great path here for the Islanders other than Ilya Sorokin wins a Vezina.
Mhm.
Maybe Dobson wins a Norris or something weird like that, or but like it's I think the more we talk about this, Eddie, the thing that hits me is how insane it is, how strong the top three in this division is,
Yeah.
and how much Jersey just turning into a pumpkin for a year completely fucked with the standings.
Yeah, and made teams, I think, seem better than they are, with New Jersey kind of foddering out a lot of those points that they lost in some high scoring games. So I think we'll see a little bit more return to the status quo. Now, the question mark, and you mentioned it, is how good are the Hurricanes this year compared to what they were last year? Because they are a team that has lost a lot and didn't really replace it, right? Like, they had Gensel for a stretch last year, and he was very good for them, but he's gone. Bunting, gone, because he went in the trade that brought Gensel over, so he's gone. Toivo Teravainen had a really good year for them last year, 25 goals and 53 points. He was their third highest scorer. He's gone. Up front, they really haven't added anything. So it's still Aho, still Svechnikov, Seth Jarvis, Martin Necas, and Jesper Kotkaniemi. That is their bread and butter up front. There isn't anybody else that really looks like they're going to jump into that mix. So where is it going to come from this year, right? Like, that's the thing. Now, this is a team that scored a lot of goals last year, 279 goals, only second to the Rangers, who scored 282. That was, I think, top 5 in goal scoring last year, at least top 3 in the conference for them. So I don't know. You're losing a lot there, and the only way I see them getting it back, at least on the offensive side of things, is I still believe in Andrei Svechnikov. I still believe that this guy, at some point, and now with no Gensel and no Teravainen, none of these other guys in the mix, he is now the number one option with Aho. If the power play can get going, like, I still think, I don't know how, Svechnikov, 19 goals in 59 games. This guy still screams 40 to 50 goal scorer to me. I don't know how he hasn't done it yet. That's the only way I see things kind of staying status quo for the Hurricanes, because Aho, 89 points last year, 35 plus goals. That's probably what he can do. Seth Jarvis, 33 goals, 67 points. Maybe he can take a step forward, but I think it's a little bit premature to say he can be anything more than that 70 to 75 point range. Martin Necas was right where he should be. So really the only one I believe can take a step forward is Svechnikov, and then you have a real big drop off to the rest of the guys on this roster, and a lot of them still aren't here. Like, a lot of them aren't here anymore. Nason, who had 37 points, is in there. Bunting, who had 36 points, is in there. Like we mentioned, Gensel had 25 points in 17 games. He's not there anymore. So are they going to get enough from Martinook, from Kotkaniemi, from Roslovic, from Stahl, from Drury, from Tyson Yost? Like, are they going to get enough from those guys? I don't see it. So I think the goal scoring takes a dip. And then we know this team will be good defensively because it's a Rod Brindamore coached team, but they still had some big losses. No more Brett Pesce, which I think for them is a loss because he was great for them. You still have Slavin, you got Brent Burns, you got Sean Walker, you've got Gostisper, Orlov, Freddie Anderson. As much as we've talked about him, you've got Kachetkov now with no more Ronta. So I don't know, man. It's I've just rambled on for a good long period of time, so I'll let you take over here. But like, I'm not sold on the Hurricanes. I think they lost a lot and haven't done much to replace it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think they were fully expecting to keep Jake Gensel, and it just didn't happen. And they're now in a position, like, again, like Slavin and Orlov and Walker and Gostisbehere and Chatfield. Like, I like that group. I don't think I missed anybody. Um, the forward group is good. I like that they added Jack Roslovich. I think he'll be good for them in a bottom six role. I think he'll be able to kill some penalties. I think he'll be able to add some potential goal scoring depth. But he's still that, and like, how much are they going to be able to get out of Jordan Stahl, who's going to be another year older and whose offense has all but completely dried up? Like, he's still a very, very, very good defensive center. He's still more than capable of matching up. I guess if I'm looking for reasons to like Carolina, I think it comes down to Jarvis and Netchas and just being like, look, these are two guys who are skilled enough and young enough that they could both hit, 70 points next year in theory. And that's kind of what we're hoping they're going to do based on the contracts we just gave them. So, maybe those are the two big things that you're kind of hoping to swing for. Jarvis last year had 67 points. Netchas had 53. Like, yeah, like you need those guys to both take another step forward. I think you have to hope Jarvis cracks 70, and I think you have to hope Netchas hits 60. If that happens, I think there's reason to be excited. And again, this is kind of, I think, similar to the Islanders in that through the coach, it is our core value is competency, and maybe not competency so much as just like capability, I guess. Like the Islanders, everyone is just good enough to get away with the shit that they do. With the Hurricanes, it's like everyone is so good within the role and they're so well coached that we think they can overcome these things. I like Jarvis. I like Netchas. I like Svechnikov. I like Aho. I like the talent they have outside of the goal. That's the issue for me at the end of the day, and it always is are they going to get the kind of goal-scoring support? Are they going to get a third person to score some fucking goals for that team, right? Because we know it's going to be Svech and Aho every year just fucking making it happen. Seth Jarvis hit 33 last year. That's huge. And Svechnikov hit 19 in 59 games. If they can really push to having 30 to 35 plus goal scorers next year, that's going to make a huge difference. And I think it'll take some of the pressure in the long run off of the goaltending. But I don't think it's a good idea to say Freddie Anderson and Peter Kochetkov are a good enough goalie tandem that we think we can win the league next year. And if you're them, that's what they're striving for. I guess the other thing you could say that is a reason to provide some optimism is that the switch from Waddell to, oh my God, Eddie, why can't I think of the GM's name? Eric Tulsky. You're on mute. The shift from Waddell to Tulsky will kind of provide some organizational stability and continuancy, but it might also be enough of a change in thinking, enough of a change in approach that maybe we see Carolina be a little bit more aggressive this year over the course of the year and going out and adding goal scoring talent.
Yeah, I mean, listen, nothing is stopping the Hurricanes from being a 100-plus point team and being in the mix with the Rangers and the Devils. They're a well-coached team. Most of that, core is still there in that they should play the same way. The goaltending, for me, is good enough in the structure they have for them to be a good team. Like you said,
In the
I'm not.
regular season, yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's the thing. I'm not convinced it's enough beyond that, but when we're projecting where they're going to finish in this division, I think it's good enough in that sense. The thing for me is, again, like I said, that on the negative side, I feel like they've lost a lot, and that's where I think if they do fall short, it'll be because they didn't do enough to replace that. They banked a lot on Gensel coming back, and then when he didn't, they just don't have enough in there right now to, on paper, replace it. Where things could go well for them, where I could see them finishing the same or higher, is because the 4 superstar talents they have there are young enough and have enough potential that, unlike, you know, the Islanders, where we said they have probably all had their best years, I can see a world where there's potential for all 4 of those players to have better years and improve. Like, there is a world where Sebastian Aho gets very close to 100 points in a Carolina offense focused solely on him and that a top line with him centering it and better power play success. There's a world where he's talented enough to be a 100-point player. Seth Jarvis playing either on a line with him or getting power play time with him consistently across an entire season after the year he had. There's a world where Seth Jarvis is a 75 to 80 point player. Like I mentioned, there's a world where Andrei Svechnikov is a 30 to 40 goal scorer and a guy that's cracking 80 to 90 points. I believe he's that talented if he stays healthy for an entire season, which has been a problem for him. That helps. Martin Necas, still a lot of talent there, 24 goals, 53 points. There's definitely a world where he adds another 10, 12 points and gets to 65, close to 70, right? Like, they're all talented enough and young enough and have the pedigree that they can do that. So this team can add, 30 to 40 points with these guys having steps forward, and they're going to all, without adding a significant addition, without bringing in a Gensel, they're going to be relied upon heavily to do that. You could even look at, Kotkaniemi. Can he have better than 27 points? For sure. Playing with a Netchas or a Jarvis or a Svechnikov, getting potentially, power play 1 or power play 2 time with some of these guys. There's certainly a world where he gets more than 27 points, right? So there's a lot of potential for this to go better for them and those guys to step forward, but it's a lot of ifs. So it's a big gray area where they're definitely going to get more than 100 points for me, but whether they're going to finish higher or lower than they did last year just hinges on the fact that they didn't add a lot to make up for the losses, and they're relying a lot on the guys they do have taking steps forward next year to get them there. So that's where I kind of put them in that mix with New Jersey. Is New Jersey's going to take a big step forward, and there's a lot of ifs on whether they can fight for the division title or not within their own roster. There's a lot of ifs within the Hurricanes roster if they can retain that spot and fight for another division championship with the Rangers.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I mean, I don't know, man. I think, like you said, there's a world where Andrei Svechnikov hits 40 goals. There's a world where Jarvis and Netchas each pick up another 15 points and take this team to a level it hasn't been yet because of the offense. I just don't know how far you can go with Anderson and Kochetkov. And again, like, Freddie Anderson is a really good goalie over the course of the regular season, but we saw it in, a little bit in Anaheim. I think we definitely saw it in Toronto, and we've seen it in Carolina. Like, there's just something about the postseason where things fall apart a little bit for him, and he's not able to play at the level that I think you expect given the way he plays in the regular season. This is an Anaheim Ducks podcast, so I guess in this sense I'll ask you this question to bring it back to the Ducks for a minute. If you were in charge of them, would you rather add Dostal or Troy Terry?
For the Hurricanes?
Yeah.
At this point, I probably would rather add Troy Terry, because I think they're in a bit of a win now. They have a young core, but they're looking to push to that next step. And I think Troy Terry has more of an immediate impact than Lucas Dostal does. We don't know what Lucas Dostal is at this point. So I think if you can keep Netchas and Jarvis and Svechnikov and Aho, you add Troy Terry to that mix, you've rounded out a very, very capable, terrifying to play against top six. Does that really solve the problems you had? Probably not. But it's certainly more of a direct, immediate, for sure impact than adding Lucas Dostal, right? So that's the thing. There's certainly more of a need for Lucas Dostal if he can prove he's a starting netminder, but that's an if. And I don't think the Hurricanes need more ifs. I think if you can add a sure thing like Troy Terry, that provides them with a bit more of an impact, I think.
And plays a style of game and behaves in a way that, Rod Brind'Amour would fucking... honest to God, dude, there is a good to decent chance Rod Brind'Amour would try to adopt Troy Terry. I just everything about Troy Rod would eat up. And I say that with all the positivity in the world. I really do think it would work out very, very well for both of those guys if they could be together.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're getting to my favorite team in this division here.
I guess, yeah. So here's what I want to ask as a way to start the conversation. Who is a bigger threat to the Rangers? The Carolina Hurricanes or the New York Rangers?
Probably the New York Rangers, yeah. I just... if this team doesn't win the division, it's because they gave it away. It's not because another team was better than them and trumped them. It's because something went wrong within that team. Because they were the best team in the division last year. They are better on paper this year. Like, they have made some shrewd, not big, but some good moves to this team to make them deeper. They brought everything back. I don't see a world in that they don't win this division. There'll be teams challenging, but I think they comfortably win by about 6 or 7 points when all is said and done.
That's crazy to me. That is absolutely crazy to me.
It's largely the same team as last year. The blue line's the same: Fox, Trouba, Lindgren, Keandre Miller, Braden Schneider, Zach Jones, Chad Ruhwedel. It's really no different. All these guys played significant games last year. Lindgren played 76, Schneider played 82, Trouba played 69, Miller played 80. They don't have Eric Gustafsson, but I mean, that's not a major thing to replace. Adam Fox played 72. So largely the defense core is still there. I like it. It's probably the best of the group that we've looked at so far. Up front, the main pieces are all still there. Artemi Panarin, led by about almost 50 points among everybody else. He has the talent to do that when the focal point of the offense is through him. He can be a 100-plus point player again. Vinny Trocheck in the role they're giving him 20 goals, 70 points. It's possible. Kreider still, again, in the role he's given in this roster, he's a 30-goal scorer, a 70-point guy. Fox, 70 points. Zibanejad, 70 points. It's possible. Then you look at Lafreniere, 28 goals, 57 points. I think he's finally coming into his own. We could see more than that this year. So then you get some... I don't think we're seeing any less with him a full year. Because you got to remember, last year, to start the year, some struggles. And then he continued to get better as the season went on and found his footing. To get going in the top six from the right at the get-go this year. No... Should we play Kako there? Should we play Lafreniere there? He's solidified that spot. Be really interesting to see what he does. Philip Hedl played 10 games for the Rangers last year. Had 6 points. Fully healthy to start the year. Then you add Riley Smith, who's no slouch as well, a 40-point player. They've just gotten better. I like Sam Carrick as an addition for the fourth line. I like Ben Olivier Groux. You still have Matt Rempe. You've got Will Cooley, who's another tough, really hard player to play against. Johnny Brazinski is a good player for them. Jimmy Vesey's a nice role player. If somebody gets hurt, can step in. They've just got some really good pieces, and there's still the Kako situation, whether he stays with this team for the whole year or not. Maybe he just gets going. I doubt it. There's not a lot of space for him, but there's that question mark there. So this is a team who was the best team in the division. They've gotten better. everybody who played well last year should have an easy path to doing the same next year. There really doesn't look like there would be any regression there. And there's a few players sprinkled in there. The Hedel for a full season, Lafreniere that could take another step forward. That's where you could, Riley Smith, that's where you could see them get even better than they were last year. And we're talking about question marks of, well, are the Hurricanes going to be better? We could see them get a little bit worse. The Devils are going to be better, but to jump from 81 points to winning the division is a very long stretch. That's why I have 6 or 7 points comfortably winning the division, maybe by even more. Like they're just the only team that has stayed as good and were as good as they were last year and potentially got better. When you're looking at all the question marks to the rest of the teams, they're really the only ones that are sitting there at the top with largely the same team as last year and not a lot of question marks from that team either.
All right. Here's the thing I'm concerned about if I'm the Rangers. Are we sure? Oh my goodness, excuse me. Are we sure Vinny Trocheck can put up 70 points again? And if he can't, does he need to? Or if we aren't sure, does he need to? Because I like Mika Zibanejad. I think the Mika Zibanejad is the best center on our team shit has very clearly not worked. I think Vinny Trocheck provides a good foil for him stylistically. Obviously, last year he was able to produce second most goals of his career, most assists of his career, most points in his career. He had a great year last year and just an absolute buzzsaw of a player last year. If he doesn't hit 70 points again, is that a problem? Or does the Lafreniere continued ascent to being a high-end elite winger help kind of dampen that a little bit?
This is why it's not a problem for me, and it's less about Lafreniere and more about Mika Zibanejad. If Lafreniere takes a step forward, that's just gravy. That's just extra bonus towards your team. That is what it is. I don't think it has an impact on whether Trocheck hits 60 points or 70 points. I think there's definitely a possibility Trocheck goes back to a more of a 60-point pace. The reason he got to 70 is he pinched those points off of Mika Zibanejad. Last year was the worst year, points-wise, for Mika Zibanejad in the last 5 years with the Rangers. He had 72 points in 81 games last year, 26 goals, which on a goals-per-game basis is the lowest. The only lower season he had was 4 seasons ago where he had 24 goals and 50 points in 56 games. He had 91 points the season before, 39 goals, 81 points and 29 goals in 81 games the season before that, and his season before the shortened season with the Rangers, he had 30 goals and 74 points in 82 games. So last year was his worst season. If Trocheck has a worse season, Zibanejad has a better season because he's getting those points back. I don't see Zibanejad having a worse season than he did last year. I think there's more of an argument when you look again at the last 5 seasons that he has a better season, and if that's the case, then some of those points are coming off Trocheck. And again, even if Zibanejad stays at 75, Trocheck goes down to 60, where do you make up those? You just got to make up 10 points. Lafreniere has a little bit of a boost. Riley Smith comes in and adds 40 plus points to this team. Philip Hedel for more than 10 games adds 30 to 40 points to this team, right? There's plenty of room for that to be made up, where we're looking at teams like the Hurricanes. How are they going to replace the last end of Gensel's production or Bunting's production or Teravainen's 50 plus points? Where are they going to get that from, right? That's the question mark. We're saying, guys have to step up and do better. With the Rangers, so we added guys to make that difference, or we're getting a guy back from injury who can be a 40 to 50 point player. We've got a young superstar who's a former first overall pick who's just getting better. Or if Trocheck goes back to normal, we had our number one center have an off year production wise because other guys stepped forward and he wasn't relied upon as heavily, right? So there's a lot more avenues for the Rangers for things to be made up and why things went the way they did than a lot of the question marks we have for other teams.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think there's a lot to like. I think, I think for me, I kind of undersold the Riley Smith edition in my head. But I think you're right. I think adding in that guy who is a definitive top 6 forward is good. Bold take. Adding top 6 talent is good. But no, I think it does provide a little bit more balance and depth and not roster, but lineup flexibility for what this team is going to be able to do on a nightly basis and how they're going to move through things. I think, I mean,
God forbid Igor Shesterkin has a Vezina season next year instead of the 9.13 save percentage he had last year. Like, God forbid he gets back to what he had the season prior to that, where 2 seasons ago where he had a 9.35 save percentage. Even the season before that, last year for Shesterkin, in a great year for the Rangers, was his worst year in a Rangers uniform.
Right.
So
yeah, no, I think you're right.
All things considered, he should, and Zibanejad should have better years than they did last year, because the track record says they should, in a team that already finished 3 points clear at the top of the division. That is, again, like I said, adding Riley Smith, adding a healthy Hedl, and I'll take Lafreniere out of the equation because that's the only if here. Just adding, potentially 60 to 70 points onto the roster, and then a track record of Zibanejad and Shesterkin should have slightly better years, is enough for me to say, well, this is a team that could comfortably finish the top of this division and win the President's Trophy.
I was going to say, are you Edward Jones calling back-to-back President Trophy winners New York Rangers? Because that's what I'm hearing, bud.
Yeah, I
is this your cup pick?
They've been my cup pick for the last 2 years, which has not panned out.
No, not quite.
So I can't jump off the bandwagon now. I'm still saying the Rangers.
That's how it works.
No,
you can jump off whatever you want.
This is of the last few years. This is the most confident I've been in the Rangers to actually get it done. I think some of the question marks we've had about the Rangers is, can Artemi Panarin be the lone leading man? He's proven that. Are Kakko and Lafreniere both going to be busts? Well, Lafreniere finally seems to be trending in the right direction. Shesterkin, is he the real deal? Is he going to continue to do this on a regular basis and be a top 3 netminder in the league? Well, that seems to be the questions answered there. Adam Fox, consistently going to be a 70-point defenseman. The questions are answered there. So all the questions we've had about the Rangers have been answered. They have a lot of young players coming into the lineup still, Schneider and Jones and Miller. And, we already mentioned Lafreniere, but they still got Brennan Othmann coming, some more young players who could force their way into the lineup at the end of the year. There's just things are moving up for the Rangers that there's rarely teams that have reached the pinnacle in the sense of being a President's Trophy winner that you can look at and say, oh, they can do even better next year. We don't really ever say that about teams that finish at the top.
Right.
Like, oh, well, they've lost this or they had to lose this because of cap reasons or whatever, it's going to be tough for them to get back there. You just look at the Rangers and you say, well, there's no reason they shouldn't be. They were the league's best team last year, and they've gotten better. And they have guys who should play better next year. So it's just, for me, it's a no-brainer. I got to go with them. There's really no question marks for me about this team heading into next year.
Yeah, I mean, you make a
the wheels really have to fall
argument, man.
Off.
You make a really compelling argument.
Like you said from the beginning, what the main question is if the Rangers don't win the division, is it because of the Hurricanes or because of them? Do they, it's because of them. If they don't win this division, I won't go as far to say the President's Trophy, but if they don't win this division, it's because something went wrong within the Rangers. Injuries,
I could
doesn't
see
pan out, whatever.
I could see a world where they take a step back results-wise and a step forward play-wise.
Yep.
Similar to what Tampa did, right? Where they went out, fucking won the President's Trophy, point record, all that shit, and then got blasted out of the sky by Columbus in the first round. And then the next year, they were just a much better team. You could talk me into that, but I do think for the way that this Rangers team is built, where they're at, they should be one of the top two teams in the division. And you know, I think the question is, like, is it fatigue? Is it just the natural kind of up and down of the position for Shesterkin? Because he's played a lot of hockey. So if he was just a little tired last year, I don't think you could hold that against him. The position itself is very volatile as far as results go.
Yeah.
The other thing that changed last year is it was Peter Laviolette's first year in charge.
Yeah.
Peter Laviolette seems to have about a 3.5 year lifespan with any team he goes to before they decide they absolutely hate him. Obviously, this would put them squarely in year 2. But boy, if they aren't getting the kind of results that they're expecting, I would have some very interesting questions about how safe Peter Laviolette's job is.
Yeah, I would put him more on the hot seat than guys like, obviously Rod Brind'Amour and others in that division, because the expectations for the Rangers are so high coming off winning the President's Trophy. There's not much more they can do in the regular season. They need to show they're still a dominant team, and that when they get to the postseason, they can take that next step forward. If you're not getting results early, they will be one of the quickest teams, I think, to make a change. We talk about the Penguins and others, if they're still John Tortorella and others, like if they're not in a position by December or January, that maybe they start thinking about moving them out and making a change for the rest of the season to try and make like a St. Louis Blues type run of, can we get, salvage this and get back in the playoffs. If the Rangers come November, right, like if they start really bad and they're below 500 and not doing well, you can see a quick change to get them out of the door to salvage this, because just making the playoffs for the Rangers is not enough next year. They would need a quick turnaround and somebody else to come in the door and get things going. So, and again, there's no, I'm sure they love what Laviolette did last year, but there's no Mike Sullivan, Rod Brind'Amour type relationship there where this guy's been around for a long time and there's some respect built up, right? It's still a prove it scenario. Like, prove last year wasn't a fluke. That's what the Rangers are kind of in right now, and that doesn't buy you a lot of leeway if the results don't come, right? Like if the Hurricanes start off slow and are below 500 by November, Rod Brind'Amour is not getting fired. There's a trust and a respect there that he can turn it around. I don't think Laviolette's earned that in New York yet, especially in a market like that, where if things are going bad, that they'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't think he's necessarily there.
Boy, wouldn't it be interesting if Mike Sullivan got fired and then picked up by the Rangers?
That would be wild.
I think that would make the Rangers the Cup favorite the moment it happened.
I mean, you could say the biggest weakness right now, and it's maybe not a shot at Laviolette. It's just there's not a lot of confidence there, again, because of the short time there, that the biggest weakness for the Rangers is
it's not even just the short time he's been there. They won the President's Trophy under him. Like, he's clearly had success. He won a Stanley Cup in Carolina. He was the head coach of some very successful teams in Philadelphia. I believe he was the coach when Nashville made it to the Stanley Cup final. Like, there's plenty of evidence to suggest that Peter Laviolette is a good coach. There is also a multitude of evidence to suggest that Peter Laviolette pisses off the people he works with at a very high rate, and the idea that a team as competitive and expectant in where they should finish this season and what their goals are would not necessarily be brimming with patience for this guy. So it's yeah, man. It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be really weird and interesting, and I do think the biggest threat to the Rangers is the Rangers, but I do think second is the Devils. I really think after this conversation, I've really talked myself into the Devils being in the President's Trophy race.
I'm imagining we have the same top three then: Rangers, Devils, Hurricanes is 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, in some order. I think yeah, I don't know. I would say that's probably the order I have it, but I would say
It'll be close between 2, 3 for me at
yeah.
least. I believe the Rangers will have a considerable gap there, but
I think
I
all three of those teams will clear 100 points, and I could very well, just like last year, see two of them clear 110.
I think the Rangers could push 120, man. I really think. I know that's a lot to ask. You're getting close to 60 wins there, but I think it's possible. I really, really do. I think they could be in that conversation. I think the Hurricanes and the Devils will be probably fighting in that 105 to 110 range for 2-3, and I think the Devils just kind of edge them out and get second. Um, and then you've got Sheldon Keefe in the Jack Adams conversation at that point. Then I got the Hurricanes third. I've got the Penguins fourth. I've got the Flyers and Islanders basically tied for fifth. I'll give the edge to the Islanders. I got the Islanders fifth, Flyers sixth, the Caps seventh, and the Blue Jackets eighth.
I think yeah.
I'm not even confident in the Penguins being fourth. I just think there's a better chance with the guys they have there and the Crosby factor that they can do it. But I still think it's
Being fourth and not getting either of the wild card spots would be hilarious.
I think it's a five playoff Atlantic, and it's a no playoff spot for the fourth place team in the Metro. We'll get to it when we get to the Atlantic, of course, but I've got other teams I think are going to be pushing for that spot over the Penguins and the Islanders and the Flyers.
So, just to make it interesting, I will say Devils, Rangers, Carolina, Philly, Pittsburgh, Washington, Columbus.
Who are the Islanders there?
I will put. Actually, I would put the Islanders fourth. I
Islanders,
think that's
Philly, Pittsburgh, Washington, Columbus.
yeah.
Okay.
I would say that's how I would do it because I just think the Islanders. Lou isn't gonna let that team fucking miss the playoff, like, or be bad. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like between crazy ass Lou and crazy ass Patrick Waugh, that team should hit at 90 points.
Yeah, yeah. A real tough debate for me looking at them is between them and Pittsburgh was like, is Crosby going to be enough, or is Sorokin going to be good enough to make a difference for the
I would
Islanders?
like.
Right, like that's the question mark, and I probably put more faith in what the Islanders have being enough to trump the Penguins, but Pittsburgh just always somehow finds a way. I don't know what it is. And
Again, man, I really think there's a world in where Rutger McGroarty puts up 30 goals and wins the Calder Trophy.
they find a way, man. If he plays a full season with Sid and Rust, it's definitely possible. So I couldn't discount them. I think there's more of a chance the Islanders somehow shoot themselves in the foot. And those three guys who scored over 30 last year, two of them don't hit it. Barzal maybe has a bit of a regression down, whatever it may be. There's just a little bit more a bit more, I could say, with the Islanders. And it will be close, within a couple points of each other, but that's why I had the Penguins fourth. But again, I don't have any of them making the playoffs anyway, so it really doesn't matter where they finish.
Right.
I got 5 Atlantic teams making the playoffs and 2 of them taking the 2 wildcard spots, so it really doesn't matter.
I would very much like to see Barzal go for 25-60 next year.
Be great. I
That
think he's certainly talented enough to do it. It's just
absolutely.
there's not enough of a supporting cast, I think, there for him to get it done.
I think I do think Patrick Wall will come in and play a little bit of a system that is going to give him a little bit more room. And I could certainly see them. I think I'm going to go 4-4, and I'll say the Islanders make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because I don't love Tampa. I really don't love Tampa. I'm not sold on that Jake Gensel shit. I don't love that they moved out Mikhail Sergachev. Like, again, we'll get into that when we do the Metro or Atlantic. But I am not a huge fan of where Tampa Bay is at right now.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say I'm probably in the same point. I think I'd probably still put Tampa above some of those teams, but I think Tampa's going to be close. And there's some other teams in that division that I think are going to take some steps forward. That
Tampa, Detroit, and Buffalo.
Yeah, exactly. Detroit, and without giving it too much away, Detroit and Buffalo for sure are teams I'm intrigued with next year and what they're going to do. So it'll be interesting to see. But there's certainly a top 3 in both divisions that
I agree very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so, which is absolutely wild. Given how I don't feel the same way about the West. I feel like the West is much more up for grabs than the East is.
There's 6 teams in the Central. I could give a good argument to like they could win the division.
Is there 6? 6 whole teams?
Mm-hmm. I don't. I'm not saying I'm giving them all an equal chance, but I could make an argument.
You telling me you can make an argument that Minnesota could win the division next year?
You chose Minnesota over St. Louis as a team to gripe with over winning the division.
Yeah, because I think St. Louis is going to suck.
Yeah, St. Louis was the one I was kind of teetering on. I can make a case for the Stars, the Jets, the Avalanche, the Preds, and the Wild, I think, to all have a chance. And I could even probably convince myself to make an argument from the Blues, whether how much I agree with it or not remains to be seen.
The Blues and the Wild, and I don't see. I think you could talk me into Utah winning the division before the Wild.
And the Pacific's kind of just a mess for a whole separate reason.
The Pacific's a fake division because apparently in the Pacific, Leon Draisaitl's worth $14 million.
I have no
Kings
confidence.
Got worse.
I have no confidence in any team in that division being very, very good.
I mean, I'm gonna have to say it out loud, but like I do think Edmonton is as close to a lock as we have. After that, I'm certainly open to. Oh, my headphones fell off. Don't know what happened there. But yeah, after that, I'm certainly open to the idea of like the whole thing is up in the air.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the Ducks and the Sharks are going to be bad. That's probably the easiest no-brainers you have for next year. But beyond that, you can make some arguments for other teams to either do better or do worse. So
I like where Vegas is at, but they're in a weird spot. Yeah, no, I agree. It'll be fun, man. I can't wait to do the rest of these divisions because this was very good, and I really enjoyed talking this out with you and kind of whittling down where I'm at on some of these teams.
Yeah, so we'll have the Central next, probably upcoming in a week or so. Then we'll have the Atlantic, and then finish off with the Pacific sans the Ducks, because we'll be doing the Ducks kind of on our own show.
Yeah.
We'll probably touch on them briefly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we will if we're going to talk about it, but like we're going to do a much more like in-depth Ducks breakdown.
Yeah. But yeah, that is it. I know we have a couple other things we hope to get to before the season starts, but at the very least, in terms of, like I said, what you can guarantee is coming is the other 3 division previews and a Ducks season preview. Beyond that, we're working on some other things and getting some other people on the show for a few different fun things. We've mentioned it to you guys already a couple times, but
everything falls apart when we say it out loud, so I don't want to say things out loud.
Yeah, so I'll just say we're working on other things, but I can guarantee you what I can guarantee you, and that's the rest of the division previews and the season preview, because that's definitely what we have to get out to. And what we have to do next year, too, is when we do our next year's previews, we have to come back and revisit these. I feel like we say that every year, and then we never come back and revisit them, probably because we're usually very wrong.
Well, I feel like it's a lot like taking pictures on your cell phone where you're like, I'm going to come back and look at all these awesome pictures of this day, and you never fucking do until like somebody has a birthday and you need to post a picture on Instagram.
We got to remember the next year, because I want to come back and see how right or how wrong we were about maybe playoffs. Maybe come playoff time, once we know the final season standings, we'll do a little season in review and do a brief check back on what we said, how things were going to pan out.
That makes sense.
All right. Well, listen, we managed to get over almost 2.5 hours, as we always do, to make up for the little bit of time in between episodes. But we appreciate you guys listening. I know season's starting to ramp up, so it's nice to get back into all things hockey. We saw the Ducks jerseys in action. I think in was the rookie showcase.
The rookie showcase.
So we saw
should get some fun clips of interviews from that and different stuff. Yeah, Zellweger and Gauthier went for Anaheim.
Yeah, saw the new jerseys in action. They're looking good on the ice. So things are starting to ramp up. We're getting excited, but appreciate you guys coming out. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely, everybody, and hug your families and your loved ones, and just none of this shit is promised, man. Just make sure the people you love know you love them. So,
take care, guys.
Bye, everybody.